are willing to follow a prophet who sleeps with a and says that God told him to do it, that's on you.
That a 54-year-old, 9-year-old, it's not healthy for you.
In regards to the idea of child and prepubescent of children, a prepubescent, which I'm going to represent here with this socket.
Have you ever noticed that when Christians debate Islam, they almost always retreat to the same talking point? How old was Aisha? They repeat it endlessly, not because it proves Christianity true, but because it's the last bullet they have left. They know that the moment we stop trading emotional accusations and actually sit down to discuss theology, the nature of God, and the internal coherence of belief, Christianity is on very shaky ground. That's why these discussions are constantly derailed away from doctrine and towards shock value attacks. So in today's video, we're not playing that game. We're going straight to the core. We're going to examine the very foundation of Christian theology and show why, once scrutinized carefully, it collapses under its own contradictions. The claim that God can assume human limitations without ceasing to be God rests on a fundamental confusion between essential attributes and contingent roles. Divine attributes such as omniscience and omnipotence are not optional features that can be suspended or compartmentalized. They define what it means to be God. To be omniscient is to know all things at all times, and to be omnipotent is to possess all power without interruption. A being that genuinely lacks these attributes, even momentarily, is no longer omniscient or omnipotent by definition. When this problem is raised, Christians often appeal to their famous analogy. God assuming humanity is like a king choosing to live in a hut without ceasing to be king. However, this analogy collapses under scrutiny. Kingship is a contingent social status, not an essential aspect of being. A king can lose political power, live in exile, or abdicate entirely and still remain the same kind of being. By contrast, divinity is not a social role but an intrinsic nature. A king losing access to luxury does not change his nature, but a being losing omniscience, even for a fraction of a second, ceases to be omniscient. Comparing an external status like kingship to intrinsic divine attributes is therefore a categorical mistake, not a valid analogy. Christians respond by saying that God did not become limited. He merely added a limited human nature. They say, divine omniscience and omnipotence still exist in his divine nature. The human nature is what experiences limitation. The problem is that limitation is not abstract. It is experiential. Jesus does not merely possess a limited nature on paper. He actually experiences ignorance, hunger, fatigue, fear, and pain. The same personal subject says, I do not know the hour, I am hungry, and I am weak. If the I is genuinely ignorant, then the subject is not actually omniscient at that moment. Storing omniscience in a separate metaphysical compartment does not preserve divinity. It suspends it in lived reality. Divinity cannot be something a person has access to later. It must be actual, continuous, and personal. Otherwise, it becomes a dormant attribute rather than an essential one. Christians insist the crucifixion is the ultimate divine sacrifice, yet deny that God died in his divine nature. They say, God the Son died according to his human nature, not his divine nature. But this creates a fatal tension. If only the human nature died, then what actually died was finite. A finite death cannot logically carry infinite atoning value unless God truly dies, which Christians explicitly deny. Saying, the person who died is divine, does not fix this, because death is not a property of persons in abstraction. It is a real event affecting the nature that undergoes it. Either God truly enters death, contradicting divine immortality, or God does not die, making the crucifixion a human death rhetorically elevated to divine status. The doctrine tries to affirm both and ends up hollowing out the very sacrifice it claims is central. Christian theology affirms that Christ has two wills, one divine and one human. They say, this does not mean two persons. It is one person with two natures. Yet, in every other context, distinct rational wills imply distinct centers of decision-making. If Jesus can will something according to his human will, while willing differently according to his divine will, then there are two loci of agency operating within the same figure. Calling this one person does not explain how two fully rational, volitional systems do not amount to two beings in function. The definition of person is stretched beyond all normal usage to avoid the conclusion. This is not clarification, it is redefinition to escape contradiction. Christians argue that Jesus is uncreated because the Word existed eternally, even though Jesus was born from Mary. They say, the Word is eternal. Only the human nature begins in time. But Jesus, the historical figure Christians worship, begins existence in a womb. If Jesus is identical to the Word, then the Word begins embodied existence, which entails change. If Jesus is not identical to the Word but merely a mode or manifestation, then Jesus is not fully identical with the eternal God. Splitting identity across eternal Word and temporal Jesus undermines the claim that Jesus himself is uncreated in any meaningful historical sense. You cannot worship a man who begins in time and then retroactively declare him eternal without collapsing identity. Christians maintain that Jesus never lost divinity, even though he lacked divine knowledge and power in practice. They say, divine omniscience still exists in his divine nature, even if his human consciousness does not access it. This reduces divinity to a non-operational background file, not an active state of being. A divine person who genuinely does not know something, who learns, who is surprised, who is overpowered, who prays for help, and who depends on others is not actually omniscient or omnipotent at that time. Omniscience and omnipotence are not optional modes. They define what it means to be God. If they are absent in lived reality, then divinity is functionally absent, regardless of metaphysical claims. Divinity that never manifests is indistinguishable from non-divinity. When all logical exits are closed and the inconsistencies are fully exposed, theologians often retreat to the same final defense. It's a mystery, or God transcends human logic. But this raises a serious moral and theological problem. If God truly wants humanity to be saved, why would he make salvation hinge on doctrines that even trained theologians struggle to explain coherently? Why would eternal punishment depend on accepting concepts that require suspending basic rational principles God himself gave us? Is it fair to hold people morally accountable and threaten them with hellfire, not for arrogance or rebellion, but for honest incomprehension? A God who demands belief while obscuring understanding does not test sincerity, he tests confusion. And that tension is not a peripheral issue, it strikes at the very heart of justice, accountability, and what it means for a belief system to claim divine origin. So that's it, guys. If you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more content.